This nibble originally aired on RSBANDB Update, episode 799. Now you see it. Enjoy. I just want to talk a bit about what this means for the future, and I did this and I wrote this out in an opinion piece on informer.rsbnb.com. But what I think that this comes down to is being a critical part of the growth strategy for RuneScape, and we know that that is the truth. That's what Mod Warden told us, and what has been brought out numerous times anytime it was talked about that RS was coming to Steam. And the benefit that we get from this is that it can be combined with mobile whenever that releases in 2021 to be a 1-2 punch that's similar to what Miniclip did for the game in the mid-2000s. It will bring in, hopefully, a new influx of players, and with this, we'll get a new influx of community builders and content creators. And this is how you evolve a community. And this is so important because we know that from past metrics that have been shown at RuneFest and other areas that a good chunk of the players are mid to high level. And this is fine, but it's also focused the game based on the metrics and previously player voting on some of the best received high-level player updates. These are things like your Prifdinus. These are things like Telos, the Elite Dungeon Trilogy, and I could go on and on, the player-owned farm. These are all examples of this, of lightning striking and updates really capturing and motivating the player base. And when you look at this list of updates, and I listed them all in the article, and some of our favorite ones are there, like the Clue Scroll rework, initial, deep sea fishing, safe cracking, player-owned farm, needle skips, elite dungeons, and then Anachronia, leads us into archaeology. And what we see with that, and keep in mind you're potentially going to have a new influx of players coming in, and then when you combine that with the branding and packaging that we've seen of all the 2020 releases, which is what a Steam game thrives on, frequent updates and headline releases, this month-to-month release strategy is exactly what's required. And what will hopefully follow from this potential Steam influx of users and the modern release strategy is a collection of updates in the next year or so that supercharge the mid-level game experience. And with that, you have to ask, like, we have such a rich experience at level 99, whether it be maxing or going for 120s or going for one of the completionist capes or just PVMing. There's choices to be made there, and we need more, but the mid-level of the game doesn't have that breadth. Now, the big question that I think comes from all this is whether or not Steam will actually bring in these new players. The other option, of course, is that Steam could just serve as a destination primarily for those who play. And if the Steam strategy is successful at bringing new players in, that same strategy can then be applied to the iOS and Android launches later on, and later potentially other storefronts. So with this, you then have a RuneScape that will become a game that is continually expanding its player base, where if you didn't do this, or if the Steam strategy wasn't successful, you'd end up with a more insular game, focusing on its high-level players and diehard fans. And yes, this is a viable strategy, but it's not a viable strategy for growth. And that's the big elephant in the room that nobody has really talked about in the community, is that 20 years on, we're dealing with a game that is positioned for a period of growth that's not been seen since 2005 or so. And with that, this is the story that players should be aware of at the end of the day, and why I think Steam is important going forward. But it's only going to be possible if these regular content releases that we have happening continue, and if Jagex is able to tap these new storefronts for an influx of players over the next year or so. And quite honestly, this is all going to answer the question in 2021 of what RuneScape stands for at 20 years old, and whether or not this community can still grow, whether or not this Steam launch succeeds.
And, I mean, I guess that's a big question. When I think about the Steam launch in that regard, though, RuneScape, like, I don't see a lot. I mean, I don't see a lot of like advertisements like that. I don't see a lot of that stuff. Maybe I'm not the targeted demographic. But regardless, it's not something that I'm sure you can think back, Shane. You probably ran into people that played RuneScape. You didn't even know it for a long time. It's kind of like Fight Club, right? First rule RuneScape is we don't really talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay. But on Steam, there's games that I find on Steam that are like 6, 7, 8 years old where I just missed. I didn't see it. I'll still give it a shot. And it's a great game. I think we're going to see a lot of that with RuneScape. There's a lot of people that haven't even been introduced to it. And when you're talking about like these monthly updates, the good thing about that on a Steam platform is that puts you in that little row. If you scroll down just a little bit, it says recently updated. Mm-hmm. You're always going to be on that front page.
That's exactly why. And I mean, if you could do that twice a month, that's even better, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what I was getting at on that, is because you can have a game, and you can have a game that tailors its content as a love letter to its fans, focuses on existing users and existing players, and builds content around them. And we saw that. We saw Jagex do that. That was one of their content strategies that has brought out, some of the updates that I talk about in this article. But it's not a strategy for growing RuneScape out. And then you're left with the question, what if, there's a decision that needs to be made someday? That's that decision about, I don't know what it would be, but let's just say it's like the old EOC thing that splits the community again. What if you did something like that and you split the current community in half? You would, literally decimate what was left. And that's why it's so important, I think, to pursue a growth strategy. Because if you don't, then you're effectively not looking for who those next members are going to be. You're just content with everybody who's played over the last 10 years or so. You can find full episodes of RSBANDB Update right here on this YouTube channel. If you found this video useful or just enjoyed it, like and subscribe, or leave a comment.